Why do you close your eyes when you kiss someone? It is not romance, it is instinct, and it is a lot older and a lot stranger than you think. In 2023, researchers pushed back the oldest written proof we have of ancient humans kissing on purpose by 1,000 years, all the way to a clay tablet from Mesopotamia, 4,500 years old. But here is the part that does not add up. If kissing were simply human nature, something built into all of us from birth, you would expect every culture on Earth to do it. They do not even close. Ask almost anyone why humans kiss and you will get the same answer. It is just what people in love do. It feels so natural, so automatic, that most people assume every culture on Earth must share it, the same way every culture shares laughing or crying. Researchers actually went and checked that assumption. They reviewed 168 cultures from around the world, pulling from ethnographic records, cross-cultural surveys, and direct reports from anthropologists who had lived among these societies. They were looking for one specific thing: evidence of romantic, lip-to-lip kissing as a recognized part of courtship or affection. What they found broke the assumption completely. Only 77 of those cultures, 46%, showed any evidence of romantic kissing at all. The other 91, the majority, showed none. In some of those societies, when anthropologists first showed people footage of couples kissing on the mouth, the reaction was not warmth. It was closer to disgust, described in some accounts as looking less like affection and more like two people trying to eat each other's faces. There was one pattern that did hold up. The more socially complex a culture was, the more likely it was to practice romantic kissing. Simpler societies, smaller and less stratified, were far less likely to have it at all. So if kissing is not universal, if more than half the cultures on the planet never developed it as a romantic gesture, then the story you were told that it is simply hardwired into being human cannot be the whole answer. So if lip kissing is not universal, what were the other half of the world's cultures doing instead? Plenty of them had their own version of an intimate greeting, they just were not doing it with their lips. The Maori of New Zealand still practice something called the hongi. Two people press their noses and foreheads together at the same time and breathe in, sharing breath in a single exchange. In Maori tradition, that shared breath is called ha, the breath of life, and the gesture is meant to join two spirits into one for that moment, not just say hello. In Inuit communities, there is a gesture called a cuneiform, pressing or rubbing the tip of your nose and upper lip against someone's cheek or forehead while breathing them in. It is usually reserved for family, loved ones, and young children, and it carries the same emotional weight a kiss carries elsewhere. Outsiders mistranslated it for decades as rubbing nose against nose, which is not actually how it works, and that old outside name for it is considered offensive by many Inuit people today. Close relatives of the same idea, forehead pressed to forehead, a nose drawn in close, breath deliberately shared, show up across parts of Polynesia and Southeast Asia as well. None of these gestures are more primitive than a kiss on the lips. They are a different solution to the exact same problem: how do you use your face at close range to tell someone this moment matters? Lips became the tool of choice in some places. Noses and shared breath became the tool of choice in others. So why does romantic kissing on the lips feel so overwhelmingly common today? Almost unavoidable in movies, in advertising, in everyday life, if less than half the world's cultures actually started out doing it. Part of the answer is that one specific version of it got exported on a massive scale. In ancient Greece and Rome, and later across medieval Christian Europe, lip-to-lip kissing became fused with the whole idea of courtly love and chivalry, an entire cultural package built around romance expressed through a kiss. That package did not stay in Europe. It spread through Christian missionary contact, through colonial expansion, through mass literacy and printed romance, and eventually through Hollywood film reaching almost every screen on the planet. In large parts of sub-Saharan Africa, in many Asian societies across Polynesia, and in some Native American cultures, romantic lip kissing was reportedly minor or absent until European colonization introduced it. One clear example: during the 19th century in British colonial India, Western literature and media introduced lip kissing to urban elites, who gradually folded it into local custom, even though ancient Indian texts already had far older references to kissing as a form of affection. just not always in that specific romantic, lips-on-lips form. In other words, what feels like the single, natural, universal way to express romantic affection with your mouth is at least partly a specific European cultural export, spread through empire, religion, and film, layered on top of dozens of older, completely different local traditions that were already doing the same emotional job in their own way. For a long time, if you asked historians for the oldest proof that humans kissed on purpose, they would point you to a Bronze Age manuscript from India about 3,500 years old. That was the accepted record. Then in 2023, two researchers studying cuneiform, the wedge-shaped writing pressed into wet clay by scribes in ancient Mesopotamia, found something that changed the timeline entirely. Buried inside medical texts and literary tablets some more than 4,500 years old were plain, unmistakable references to kissing between lovers. Not poetry about love in general. Actual descriptions of the act itself, along with something else, medical warnings about a skin condition that seemed to pass between people who kissed. That pushed the oldest written record of kissing back by a full 1,000 years. But notice the wording, the oldest written record, not the oldest kiss. Ancient art and DNA evidence both suggest the behavior itself is far older than anyone's ability to write it down. Some researchers now argue kissing could be nearly as old as our species itself, tens of thousands of years before a single scribe in Mesopotamia ever pressed a stylus into clay. Picture that scribe for a second, hunched over a tablet in a mud-brick room, recording a medical complaint from a patient, and accidentally leaving behind the oldest proof of a kiss in human history, without having the faintest idea that is what they were doing. Mesopotamia was not the only ancient civilization writing kissing into its own history. In Egypt, a stone relief carved during the reign of the pharaoh Akhenaten at his capital of Tel el Amarna, roughly 3,300 years ago, shows his queen, Nefertiti, kissing their daughter on the mouth. It is a small, tender detail carved into a much larger royal monument, easy to miss if you are not looking for it. Egyptian love poetry adds even more. Papyri excavated at a village called Deir el Medina, home to the workers who built the tombs in the Valley of the Kings, preserve New Kingdom love poems that describe kissing directly, written by ordinary people, not just royalty, about wanting to be close to someone they loved. Between the Mesopotamian medical tablets and these Egyptian reliefs and papyri, you get two entirely separate ancient civilizations, writing and carving kissing into their history within a similar stretch of centuries, independently of each other. That is not proof that either civilization invented the behavior. It is proof that by the time humans were reliably writing anything down at all, kissing was already common enough, ordinary enough that scribes and sculptors on two different sides of the ancient world both thought it was worth recording. Those same medical warnings on the Mesopotamian tablets point to something people rarely connect to kissing: its long, quiet role in spreading disease. The researchers behind the 2023 study argued that kissing was not some sudden trigger that caused a new illness to suddenly appear. Instead, it was a constant, steady influence, spreading orally transmitted microbes, including the virus responsible for cold sores, across thousands of years of human history, one kiss at a time. That is not a modern problem. It is an ancient one, old enough to be recorded in some of the very first medical texts humans ever wrote. Today, the World Health Organization estimates that roughly 2 out of every 3 people under 50, worldwide, carry that same virus, most of them infected as children through nothing more dramatic than an ordinary, affectionate kiss from a parent or relative. Which means every time you have heard someone joke about catching something from a kiss, they were unknowingly describing a pattern that stretches back to the very first civilizations we have written records for, and one that is still quietly playing out in most households on the planet right now. The romance and the biology were never separate. They were the same event, viewed from 2 different angles. For decades, one explanation dominated the science of why kissing feels the way it does. It is built around a set of immune system genes called the major histocompatibility complex. The idea was simple and honestly a little seductive. When you kiss someone, your nose and tongue are quietly reading chemical signals tied to their immune system. Pick a partner whose immune genes are different enough from your own, the theory said, and any children you had together would inherit a wider, stronger range of natural defenses. Kissing, in other words, as a built-in genetic background check. It is a great story. It got repeated in magazine after magazine, dating advice column after dating advice column. Then a large analysis pooling years of scent preference experiments and real genetic data from actual couples checked whether the theory actually held up. It found no meaningful overall link between how different a couple's immune genes were and who they were actually attracted to. The tidy, popular explanation does not fully survive contact with the evidence, which does not mean kissing has nothing to do with your senses. It means the real answer is messier and honestly more interesting than one clean genetic theory. Here is what the evidence does support. Your lips and the skin right around your mouth hold roughly 19% of all the touch-sensing nerve endings in your entire body, packed into an area smaller than the palm of your hand. Which means a kiss is delivering an enormous amount of information in just a few seconds. Texture, taste, warmth, pressure. Small, almost unconscious signals about someone's health and hygiene read by the single most sensitive patch of skin most people ever put in contact with another person. At the same time, kissing sets off a real chemical chain reaction inside your brain. Dopamine rises, the same reward chemical tied to craving and pleasure. Oxytocin rises with it, the hormone most closely linked to trust and attachment. Together, they are not just making the moment feel good. They are helping wire your brain to want that specific person again, cementing a bond that goes far beyond the few seconds the kiss actually lasted. So a kiss is quietly doing two jobs at once. It is running a live sensory background check on someone, and at the exact same time, it is gluing the two of you together a little more tightly, whether either of you could ever explain why. There is one more detail that almost never makes it into the romantic version of this story. A single kiss can pass millions of bacteria from one person to another. That sounds unpleasant until you consider what some researchers think it might actually be doing. Delivering small, repeated doses of exposure that help train and prime the immune system over time. The same way a vaccine works on a much smaller, much stranger scale. And the roots of the behavior itself may reach back long before our own species existed. A large comparative study published in late 2025 traced kissing across the primate family tree and concluded that lip-to-lip contact most likely evolved in the common ancestor of the great apes, somewhere between 21.5 and 17 million years ago. That same analysis argues Neanderthals were very likely kissing too, long before modern humans ever showed up. Chimpanzees still kiss today, but watch what it is actually for. Primatologists have documented chimps kissing mostly after a fight as a way to make peace, and it happens more between males than females. It has nothing to do with romance. It is closer to a formal apology. Bonobos take it further, kissing more often than chimpanzees do, sometimes using their tongues, as part of the same close social bonding that holds their groups together. So the kiss you think of as a deeply human, deeply romantic act may have started as something far more practical in a distant ancestor. A way to patch things up after conflict, or reinforce a bond that had nothing to do with love the way you think of it now. So the next time you kiss someone or they kiss you, what is actually happening is not simple at all. It is a habit that under half the cultures on Earth ever adopted on their own, while the rest built their own version out of pressed foreheads and shared breath instead, before one particular version of it spread across the planet through empire, religion, and film. First caught in writing on a 4,500-year-old clay tablet, and carved in stone by Egyptian sculptors around the same distant era, but almost certainly practiced by humans and their ancestors tens of millions of years before anyone thought to record it. Running on nerve endings, hormone surges, traded bacteria, and quite possibly one very old habit of making peace after a fight, passed down from a distant ancestor who was not thinking about romance at all. None of that makes it less meaningful. If anything, it means every single kiss is carrying a genuinely ancient piece of behavior forward, one person, one moment at a time, whether either of you realizes it or not. If this kind of question, the ones about why humans actually do the strange, ordinary things we never stop to think about, keeps you curious, Subscribe, there will be a lot more of them, one surprising human behavior at a time, with the real evidence behind each one. Here is the one question worth sitting with after all this. If kissing is not universal and it is not pure instinct, then how much of what feels like love is actually something else, learned, passed down, and quietly dressed up as a feeling you were simply born already knowing how to have?